friends, I'm Ellie. Welcome to Cardboard Design. Today, let's listen to interesting and meaningful fairy tales. I believe you will like it. The first fairy tale, The Little Folks Presents. A tailor and a goldsmith were traveling together, and one evening when the sun had sunk behind the mountains, they heard the sound of distant music, which became more and more distinct. It sounded strange, but so pleasant that they forgot all their weariness and stepped quickly onward. The moon had already arisen when they reached a hill on which they saw a crowd of little men and women, who had taken each other's hands and were whirling round in the dance with the greatest pleasure and delight. They sang to it most charmingly, and that was the music which the travelers had heard. In the midst of them sat an old man who was rather taller than the rest. He wore a party-colored coat, and his iron gray beard hung down over his breast. The two remained standing full of astonishment, and watched the dance. The old man made a sign that they should enter, and the little folks willingly opened their circle. The goldsmith, who had a hump, and like all hunchbacks was brave enough, stepped in. The tailor felt a little afraid at first, and held back, but when he saw how merrily all was going, he plucked up his courage, and followed. The circle closed again directly, and the little folks went on singing and dancing with the wildest leaps. The old man, however, took a large knife which hung to his girdle, whetted it, and when it was sufficiently sharpened, he looked round at the strangers. They were terrified, but they had not much time for reflection, for the old man seized the goldsmith and with the greatest speed, shaved the hair of his head clean off, and then the same thing happened to the tailor, but their fear left them when, after he had finished his work, the old man clapped them both on the shoulder in a friendly manner, as much as to say, they had behaved well to let all that be done to them willingly and without any struggle. He pointed with his finger to a heap of coals which lay at one side, and signified to the travelers by his gestures that they were to fill their pockets with them. Both of them obeyed, although they did not know of what use the coals would be to them, and then they went on their way to seek a shelter for the night. When they had got into the valley, the clock of the neighboring monastery struck 12, and the song ceased. In a moment all had vanished, and the hill lay in solitude in the moonlight. The two travelers found an inn, and covered themselves up on their straw beds with their coats, but in their weariness forgot to take the coals out of them before doing so. A heavy weight on their limbs awakened them earlier than usual. They felt in the pockets, and could not believe their eyes when they saw that they were not filled with coals but with pure gold. Happily, too, the hair of their heads and beards was there again as thick as ever. They had now become rich folks, but the goldsmith, who, in accordance with his greedy disposition, had filled his pockets better, was as rich again as the tailor. A greedy man, even if he has much, still wishes to have more, so the goldsmith proposed to the tailor that they should wait another day, and go out again in the evening in order to bring back still greater treasures from the old man on the hill. The tailor refused, and said,
I have enough and am content. Now I shall be a master, and marry my dear object, for so he called his sweetheart, and I am a happy man.
But he stayed another day to please him. In the evening the goldsmith hung a couple of bags over his shoulders that he might be able to stow away a great deal, and took the road to the hill. He found, as on the night before, the little folks at their singing and dancing, and the old man again shaved him clean, and signed to him to take some coal away with him. He was not slow about sticking as much into his bags as would go, went back quite delighted, and covered himself over with his coat.
Even if the gold does weigh heavily,
said he,
I will gladly bear that.
and at last he fell asleep with the sweet anticipation of waking in the morning an enormously rich man. When he opened his eyes, he got up in haste to examine his pockets, but how amazed he was when he drew nothing out of them but black coal, and that howsoever often he put his hands in them.
The gold I got the night before is still there for me,
thought he, and went and brought it out, but how shocked he was when he saw that it likewise had again turned into coal. He smote his forehead with his dusty black hand, and then he felt that his whole head was bald and smooth, as was also the place where his beard should have been. But his misfortunes were not yet over. He now remarked for the first time that in addition to the hump on his back, a second, just as large, had grown in front on his breast. Then he recognized the punishment of his greediness, and began to weep aloud. The good tailor, who was wakened by this, comforted the unhappy fellow as well as he could, and said,
Thou hast been my comrade in my traveling time. Thou shalt stay with me and share in my wealth.
He kept his word, but the poor goldsmith was obliged to carry the 2 humps as long as he lived, and to cover his bald head with a cap. The goldsmith's insatiable desire for more wealth results in the loss of his initial fortune. The transformation of gold into coals and the physical changes in his appearance symbolize the consequences of unchecked greed. Despite the goldsmith's greed, the tailor remains loyal and offers comfort in the face of misfortune. This highlights the importance of friendship and supporting others, even in challenging circumstances. The goldsmith's physical transformation, bald head, smooth face, and additional hump, serve as a punishment for his greed. This reflects the idea that wrongdoing and excessive desire can lead to negative consequences. The story implies that inner beauty and contentment are more valuable than material wealth. The physical transformations of the goldsmith highlight the superficial nature of materialistic pursuits. The second fairy tale, The Willow Wren. In former days, every sound still had its meaning and application. When the smith's hammer resounded, it cried,
Strike away! Strike away!
When the carpenter's plane grated, it said,
Here goes! Here goes!
If the mill wheel began to clack, it said,
Help, Lord God! Help, Lord God!
And if the miller was a chief and happened to leave the mill, it spoke High German, and first asked slowly,
Who is there? Who is there?
and then answered quickly,
The miller! The miller!
and at last quite in a hurry,
He steals bravely! He steals bravely! 3 pecks in a bushel!
At this time the birds also had their own language which everyone understood. Now it only sounds like chirping, screeching, and whistling, and to some like music without words. It came into the birds' mind, however, that they would no longer be without a ruler, and would choose one of themselves to be their king. One alone amongst them, the green plover, was opposed to this. He had lived free, and would die free, and anxiously flying hither and thither, he cried.
Where shall I go? Where shall I go?
He retired into a solitary and unfrequented marsh, and showed himself no more among his fellows. The birds now wished to discuss the matter, and on a fine May morning they all gathered together from the woods and fields. Eagles and chaffinches, owls and crows, larks and sparrows, how can I name them all? Even the cuckoo came, and the hoopoe, his clerk, who is so called because he is always heard a few days before him, and a very small bird which as yet had no name, mingled with the band. The hen, which by some accident had heard nothing of the whole matter, was astonished at the great assemblage.
What is going to be done?
She cackled, but the cock calmed his beloved hen and said,
Only rich people!
and told her what they had on hand. It was decided, however, that the one who could fly the highest should be king. A tree frog which was sitting among the bushes, when he heard that, cried a warning,
No, 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 no!
because he thought that many tears would be shed because of this, but the crow said,
Caw, caw!
and that all would pass off peaceably. It was now determined that on this fine morning they should at once begin to ascend, so that hereafter no one should be able to say,
I could easily have flown much higher, but the evening came on, and I could do no more.
on a given signal. Therefore, the whole troop rose up in the air. The dust ascended from the land, and there was tremendous fluttering and whirring and beating of wings, and it looked as if a black cloud was rising up. The little birds were, however, soon left behind. They could go no farther, and fell back to the ground. The larger birds held out longer, but none could equal the eagle, who mounted so high that he could have picked the eyes out of the sun. And when he saw that the others could not get up to him, he thought,
Why shouldest thou fly still higher? Thou art the king.
and began to let himself down again. The birds beneath him at once cried to him,
Thou must be our king. No one has flown so high as thou.
Except me!
Screamed the little fellow without a name, who had crept into the breast feathers of the eagle.
and as he was not at all tired, he rose up and mounted so high that he reached heaven itself. When, however, he had gone as far as this, he folded his wings together, and called down with clear and penetrating voice,
I am king! I am king!
Thou our king.
cried the birds angrily.
Thou hast compassed it by trick and cunning.
So they made another condition. He should be king who could go down lowest in the ground. How the goose did flap about with its broad breast when it was once more on the land. How quickly the cock scratched a hole. The duck came off the worst of all, for she leapt into a ditch but sprained her legs, and waddled away to a neighboring pond, crying,
Cheatin', cheatin'.
The little bird without a name, however, sought out a mouse, who slipped down into it, and cried out of it with his small voice,
I am king! I am king!
Thou art king.
cried the bird still more angrily.
Dost thou think thy cunning shall prevail?
They determined to keep him a prisoner in the hole and starve him out. The owl was placed as sentinel in front of it, and was not to let the rascal out if she had any value for her life. When evening was come, all the birds were feeling very tired after exerting their wings so much, so they went to bed with their wives and children.
Always alone. You will always be there. Always alone. You will always be there. Always alone. You will always be there. Always alone. always alone. You will always be there. Always alone. You will always be there. Always alone. You will always be there. Always alone. Always alone. You will always be there. Always alone. You will always be there. Always alone. You will always be there. Always alone.
I leave the TV on, I'm done with your sad eyes. I can't take another night with you on like this. So let's go, I'm sure you can take it. You've been crying over him for a lifetime. So if you don't mind, we will dance till it's way past late. Another course that we can fly with the baseline. Boys be boys, ain't no excuse, babe. Now hey you, oh hey you, I know you can find someone better. Oh hey you, oh hey you. He's a vibe.